them a lot, but they don't really
stuff. And I
bomb
guess
them
like
or hurt them.
from that, I kind of realized my own
It's not trying to
Jewish
just say like
identity.
this happened. It's
So
also kind of like a larger
once I realized
discussion on Jews, like
Shiloh
why
right on
people
top
care
of
about
us
us in the mountains. So they, the security is a lot harder than everywhere else because they're so close to us. Okay, my name is Jamila Jabawi. I'm 24 years old. I was born and raised in Illinois most of my life. We moved around for my dad's job. He's an engineer. In our culture, we are to build homes back home, which is in Palestine. And my parents are both from Palestine. My mom was actually raised in Puerto Rico, though, since she was a very young girl. Um, so we have a very mixed family. But
on my mother's side, my mom is from South Africa. She immigrated to America, I want to say about 30 years ago, 25, 30 years ago, something like that. So my mother was born Catholic, raised Catholic, is not Jewish to our knowledge in any way, shape, or form. And originally, though, her family comes from Portugal. So from Portugal to South Africa to America. And then on my dad's side, my dad is, I think, third generation American. He grew up in Long Island in New York, but his family originally comes from Belarus into America. So from Minsk in Belarus. So it's like Ashkenazi, Eastern Jew, pretty much, and that's my family history. But other than that, I don't have really any connection in Israel other than the fact that my family's Jewish. I was born in Rockford, Illinois, raised there. It's about an hour and a half away from Chicago, and then I spent 4 years in Wisconsin, and then after that, I left for Israel after I'd finished my 4-year degree. And I guess like my relationship with Israel, like what my actual relationship with Israel now is, I lived there for 2 years and I served in the army for a year and a half.
but my dad did build a home, and I've lived there about 2 years. I lived there, and it's beautiful, very, very beautiful. But it is controlled by Israel. Now, where I'm from, Ramallah. This is what it's called. It's a biggest city, like how Chicago's in Illinois, kind of like that. And there's a village there. It's called Masaya. That is where I'm from, and this is more of a. It's on the lower uh, lower environment, basically, because Palestinians are not allowed to build any homes on mountains or anything on high levels, because, of course, they think of bombings and stuff. And of course, there's bad and good on both sides, so there's a reason for that. Now, where my town is, they don't really they harass them a lot, but they don't really bomb them or hurt them because there's an Israeli town named Shiloh right on top of us in the mountains. So they, the security is a lot harder than everywhere else because they're so close to us. But it's a hard life, but I mean, at least they're not kicking us out. So that's good.
What really got me interested in Israel was, if you're sort of Jewish at all in any way, shape, or form, and my name's Benjamin Michael Levine, it's a very Jewish name. I'll always be identified as Jewish, pretty much to anyone who knows that. People ask you about Israel all the time. It's just like a thing you kind of have to deal with. Like, by virtue of being Jewish, people kind of look to you for questions on Israel, for being an authority on it, because it's such a hot topic. And when I finished college, I went on a trip with my father to Iceland for about 3 weeks. And at the time, I had just graduated. I didn't really have any kind of clear career path in mind or anything like that. And when I was there, I read this book called Jews, God, and History. It's by a French historian named Max Dimont. And it's basically just like a succinct history of the Jewish people. It's a pretty small book, but it covers from the establishment of like the first tribes in Israel all the way up to the creation of Israel. In a very broad sense. It's not trying to just say like this happened, this happened. It's also kind of like a larger discussion on Jews, like why people care about Jews, like how they've been important in history and all this stuff. And I guess like from that, I kind of realized my own Jewish identity. So once I realized that, the idea of doing the army sort of became a reality for me, because I didn't even think about that before. But then after I understood that, I was like, oh, I could probably do the army in Israel. And I looked into it, and it was a year and a half, and I really wanted to go and learn more about Israel. I wanted to learn another language. I wanted to live by myself in a foreign country where I didn't know anybody, and I really wanted to do the army as well. So I just kind of covered all of those things very quickly. In about 2-year time period, I was able to do all of those things, and those are the reasons I did it mainly. And then, I did guard duty in the West Bank at the settlements and things like that. You know, like it's affected me in that way. It was part of my life. I can't say that it like did anything to me. I participated in it, in a lot of ways, and thus I sort of brought my whole family into it much closer. I mean, on kind of a superficial level, though, being Jewish at all, and again, I'm half Jewish. Not even all Jews consider me Jewish at all. Um, you know, Israel is just a big sort of point of pride in a lot of ways, and also it's considered a very just important thing historically, for Jews. And I mean, in this sense, I feel that by having done that, I was really able to learn a lot more about myself, about where I come from, about that group of people that I'm a part of.
Um, the one thing is it has really bad electricity. Once again, it is controlled by Israel. You see, like one side, like Tel Aviv, where the Israelis are, and there's like lights. I mean, Las Vegas has nothing on it. And then you go and look at the other side, and it's dark, all dark. It's really like it looks scary, actually, if anything. Um, it's like I said, it's controlled. Now, the village that I live in, which is considered one of the best, it's the electricity cuts off every couple hours. Water, if you have it that day, you're actually lucky. So it's really bad. I think that's the only reason I've never lived there for too long because I can't. I have to take like at least 2 showers a day, and there, if you could take one every 3 days, it's good. The water is either really freezing, really dirty, too hot, boiling, or there's no water at all. So it's the water they drink from most of the time is dirty. Even when I lived there, I actually got sick, very sick from it. What else? Now, when I was living there, I was younger. I was, kindergarten, first, second grade, so it wasn't that long. But so I didn't know as much. But from what I've seen, always soldiers with machine guns everywhere. It was always like it's always feel like you're scared. You're not really safe. These are not really our people that are holding these guns. When I do remember when I was younger, my brother was about I would say 10 years old, and there was a wheel on the road. It was on fire, and Israeli soldiers came in their tanks. It was the middle of the street, and they were telling my brother to go and pick it up. And he was a kid, so he was scared, with the machine guns and everything, and he didn't want to, so he started crying. And so my younger brother, which was more of like a bully, who was a little bit stronger and tougher, so he went and he tried to help him, and they actually kicked him out of the way. Uh, and then of course the town tried to help them, and even actually a couple of guys that did try to help my brother out were arrested, and I have no idea what happened to them after that. I was still young, so I didn't hear what's going on with that. But that's just one of the things. That's just a little thing that they just, they were gonna hit him and beat him if he didn't pick it up, and he actually had to kick it for it to move it out of the street. Um, Another experience, which I experienced, which I do remember a little bit better. I was a little bit older. Um, I was in a taxi coming home from Ramallah, which I told you was the city there, and it's a shopping center. And the taxi driver was called out from the Israeli soldiers, and we didn't know why. The Israelis were in town, and they had their tanks, and we were looking, and all I see is little kids on top of a building, and they're like maybe 4 or 5 the most. Year old, not 4 or 5. There's only two kids, and they were throwing like little stones at them, at their tanks, of course. And they went and took my taxi driver out. They put him right in front of them, and they just start shooting at the kids on top of the buildings. And to me, it was unbelievable. And I was, telling my cousins or whoever that were with me, my friends, I'm like, you guys have to do something. You have to get out, like help them. And they're like, no, no, sit down. They will hurt you. They don't care if you're American or not. They will hurt you. Just sit down. And of course, this lasted for about 10, 15 minutes. The shooting was about 5 minutes. It wasn't that long, but of course it is. But overall, for them, it wasn't long. And they made us there for like an hour. We were there for an hour until they found out who these kids were. And after that, we have no idea what happened. They just took them out, and I don't know if they took the parents or what they did, but that's basically what happened. These are just the little stories that I have for you. Other than the fact that when they go to Jerusalem, they have cages around them. And it makes Palestinians look like they're animals. And I think that's why there's a lot of them that are going crazy. They are like acting out and doing wrong things and being bad towards each other because of how they've been treated for so long. A lot of them don't have food to feed their kids, or they can't live life there or pay for anything because they're not allowed to, or they're late for their jobs because of the security. There was also an ambulance that was behind us one time, and they wouldn't let the ambulance go through because they're doing security. So whoever was in that ambulance either would have gotten hurt more, died, maybe pregnant women. We have no idea, but a lot of deaths happen because of security, because they would just do it just to hurt us and not let us go through. And this is just me visiting, so I didn't really live there for me to know how bad it really was.
I had Palestinian people working at my apartment all the time, like coming in and out, doing things. It just depends on what you consider Palestinian, because like I'm talking about Arab people that live in the state of Israel and have Israeli citizenship, which is a thing. So they're Palestinian completely. So I would interact with them, like Palestinian people working at McDonald's, like in hijabs and everything, all over Israel. So the Druze, who are ethnically Arab but not Muslim. It's a different religion. It's a very small religion. It's only in Syria, Lebanon, and the Golan Heights. So those people do the army. Like I met tons of Jewish people in the army. I met a couple Bedouin people in the army, and things like that. So I would interact with Arab people who could be Palestinian considered on a regular basis. And then obviously when I was guarding in the West Bank, I was checking IDs on Palestinian people. I escorted several people to jail. There was one really interesting instance where I had an interaction with a Palestinian living in the West Bank, where I was on a mobile patrol in an armored vehicle, and we got a call saying that there was some dude running around in the territory that we were protecting. So we went to go check it out, and me, my commander, and one other guy get out, and we approach him and we say, "Can you stop? We need to ask you some questions." And he starts running. He just bolts. And we run after him and stuff like that. And eventually he just kind of stops moving and he's sort of walking around. And we approach him. And I see him, and the dude's wearing no shoes. He's got like basketball shorts on and like a tank top. So we start to talk to him, and he speaks sort of Hebrew, a little English, but mainly nothing. So we were kind of trying to communicate with him in Arabic. So I look at him, he had no shoes on, so his feet were completely cut up. He'd been running in the rocks, and in the territory we're in particular, the rocks there were like super jagged, like spiky. If you had no shoes on, you would for sure just get like cuts all up in your feet. So this dude's feet were all bruised, cut up, just like horrible, disgusting. And we eventually talked to him, and we got our bigger commander to come. And he got one of his friends, who was a Druze, the people I was telling you about, speaks Arabic, to talk to the guy to figure out what the hell's going on. Like, who is this guy? Because he wasn't dangerous. We checked him for weapons and stuff. And apparently, he had gotten into a fight with his father, and his father had cast him out of the house, like, immediately. And just told him to leave, and this dude just got out and started running. It was just like a domestic dispute. And what we did is we called in our paramedic, we patched up the dude's feet completely, and we drove him back home, Something simple like that. So it just depends. But I was also in like Operation Pillar of Defense, which was a huge operation on Gaza while I was in the army. Like actual fighting, like lots of bombing and terrible things like that. And I participated in that. So I guess that's kind of like a form of interaction with Palestinians. It just kind of all gets down into how you define it. But I had a lot of different interactions with people who are Arab, Muslims, living in Israel or Palestine. The question of what side I'm on, I think is pretty clearly answered by virtue of me having been in the army in Israel. Okay, clearly I'm on the Israeli side. I fought for the Israeli side. I theoretically put my life on the line for Israel, and that's that. I didn't do it for Palestine. So I'm on the Israeli side, out and out, I'll say that. But do I think that there's potential for a solution in Israel? Absolutely, I think there's a potential for a solution in Israel. I think it's a two-state solution for sure. But I think where you're running into a lot of problems with this whole thing is it comes down to definitions and stuff like that. Because when you're talking about Israel, it's a specific territory that we know Israel, right? And then you got the West Bank, and then you got Gaza, okay? And the West Bank and Gaza are considered Palestine, okay? It's operated or thought of as one unit, even though there's a separate governing body in the West Bank. There's a separate governing body in Gaza. So and those two governing bodies don't agree either. One is way more radical in Gaza. You have Hamas, which is a longtime terrorist organization running that place entirely. It's extremely dangerous to go there. You can't do anything. And then in the West Bank, it's more politicized, and they're more integrated with Israel. It's a huge misconception that the West Bank is kind of not at all integrated or is segregated, or, by an apartheid system or whatever the term is that is in vogue today. In that there's actually fairly free travel between the West Bank and Israel. Many Palestinians work in Israel. Most of the West Bank people who work in those jobs, if the company is owned by Israel, all the people working there are Palestinians. It's just more integrated than people, I think, really give it credit for. And Israel has a very distinct Arab culture. Like, half the people in Israel, half the Jews, come from Middle Eastern places. I had my roommate his family's from Libya. I had friends from Yemen, from Iraq, Syria, Lebanon, Iranian Jews, tons of people. So like they have a very strong Arabic culture. I mean, Hebrew, they use Arabic words in Hebrew all the time. Like 20% of Israel is Arab. So like what I'm saying is, what a lot of people don't understand is there's actually a very strong sort of closeness between these two cultures in kind of a lot of ways, except Gaza, which is very extreme. And I think it's really just going to be a matter of time before it gets figured out, and that it becomes less politicized, and that people are just kind of able to, talk about it and discuss it. But I also think, I mean, look, the wounds are really fresh. Israel's a super new country. It's only 60, 70 years old, something like that. So, I mean, you still have people who were around today living at the creation of that state. It would be like if there were American Indians who, had smallpox or whatever in the 1600s alive today, and like that being that close in a lot of ways. Like, and what I'm saying is that, American Indians today, there's still a lot of kind of historical sort of, angst about it. So I think that's where a lot of that comes from with the Palestinians as well, is it's still so young. And like, that there's just a lot of a time that needs to be taken, I think, for anything to move on, really.
Personally, no. They've been trying, for God knows, before I was born, before any of our grandparents were born, to try to stop the war, be at peace, be equal. It will never be equal. The two-state will always be better because Israeli always has the upper hand no matter what we do. And when I say two-state, I'm not talking about just splitting now whatever we have, even though we don't have anything. I'm saying give land back, give to the Palestinians homes. Don't make us have to have permission to build homes on mountains. We live there because we love it, because it's so beautiful. Where we go pray, one of our biggest lands are, in Jerusalem. And it's like I want the two-state because we don't tell Israelis they can't go pray, to the wall that they pray to. Why should they tell us where we could go pray and where we can't? Why do the Palestinian citizens have to have a visa to go visit their religious state? It doesn't make sense to me. Also, Palestinians are not only Muslims. They're also in Bethlehem. They don't even let Palestinian Christians or Catholics or anybody go to Bethlehem and pray and see where Jesus was born and touch the rock. And they don't let anybody do anything. If you're Palestinian, that's it. You're controlled by whatever they say. I mean, you could be even American citizens. They treated me the same thing, like if I was just garbage to them. And of course, there was some good Israelis that were, they understood, they were nice. But most of them were just, I have a machine gun, you don't. So you go back in that line and you wait for 3-4 hours just to go in a line that's about, 10 people in front of you. This is just, it's very controlled, and it will never be a one state. It can't be, because they've been through too much together. They've killed so many of our Palestinian people, even though a lot of their innocent people has died as well. But not even a quarter of how many Palestinian people have been kicked out of their homes are in refugees, or the wives are widows, and the kids don't have any food or water or anything, just because the Israelis wanted their land and they took their home and they bombed, and there could be kids out in the front. I mean, there's so many things that went wrong. It will never be able to be one state. A two-state will always be better. This is just my opinion, and I think a lot of Palestinians would agree, and even Israelis would agree. I would love to. In our culture, a lot of family, they do go back home. They go back home to raise their kids, so they know their culture. They know the only reason I know how to read and write Arabic is because I lived there for 2.5 years. If I didn't, I would not know any kind of Arabic. I would not know anything about my culture, about our prophets, about God, nothing, because I didn't know anything. Now, I would want to go back there, I would love to build a house, of course. But living there, I can't even have, police over here, give me tickets. I get mad. Imagine back home when, Israelis control everything. You can't even take a step without being, asked why, where, when, how, who. They know everything and anything about you 24 hours a day. And I honestly, I don't want to put my kids through what we went through, even for 2 years. Imagine people that actually lived there, that went through so much. My husband was raised there, and he's not here today. He's at work. But I mean, they're scarred. They don't trust anybody. They have trust issues. Um, if you probably met other Palestinians that were born there, they're just always scared. Always feel like somebody's watching them. Always, have to ask permission to make sure you're sure the law's not gonna get me in trouble. They don't understand that America's a lot better than back home. Now back to the question. Sorry, I went off. Would I raise my family there? It's beautiful. If there was peace in a two states where we could do whatever we want whenever we want and nobody asks us why, I would live there. I would live there. It's beautiful. It's a very, very beautiful land. A lot of nature. Weather is nice. If the water was warmer and better and cleaner, I'd probably live there for sure. But now I don't. There's no way. I want my daughter, my kids to just live a free life and know their rights and know what they can do.
When you go out into the army every week in Israel, you're coming from your house, with your mom and your dad and your brothers and your sisters. Like what you're doing, people you're defending is very real to you. And for Israelis, they've been preparing for it their whole life. They're all aware, from day one that they're going to join the army at 18, and that's that. Which also, changes a lot of it. Like here, it's more like a job. It's more of a decision. Like, you said the army is pursuing you aggressively because they want you. But in Israel, there's no choice. You're just doing it. That's it. You're 18. So the whole character and the whole mission of the army is very different. But what I would say about the two countries is I think America and Israel are very similar countries in a lot of ways. Like, I think the values are really similar. I think the people are really similar. It's just, I just think there's a lot culturally that unite Israel and America in a lot of profound ways. And that's just what I found being there. I was able to move to Israel, which is a country in the goddamn Middle East, in the desert, and still feel like I'm in a fairly modern environment, with like modern conveniences and stuff like that. And then occasionally I'd see some, Arab dude riding a camel and just be like, what the fuck is going on? But it's kind of amazing just how sort of integrated and worldly that place is, considering how long it's been around. And I really believe that, and they're just moving forward all the time. Like there's just nothing but building and technology and all sorts of shit going on there all the time. It's just it's an exciting place to be, but it's very new still, and developing.